So what really happened the night Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found lifeless in the snow? Now, the headlines have spun a dozen theories, but the truth may lie in what the autopsy revealed. You see, two medical examiners, a black box vehicle data, and a chilling pattern of injuries paint a picture that's far more damning, in my opinion, and far more human than the rumor and speculation that's running about. It's testimony that the mainstream might have missed. Injuries isolated to just one side of the body, no signs of a fight, and cold clinical evidence that points to a catastrophic impact, not a calculated cover-up. Well, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm glad you're here, and before we dive into this bit of the story, do me a quick favor and hit that like and subscribe button. And make sure that you've got notifications turned on so you don't miss a single update. Now let's walk through what likely happened the night John O'Keefe died. And I recognize there are two very distinct camps on this thing. I'd like to keep this really professional, so please, check the emotion, and let's just talk about facts as we know them. And you may disagree with the facts as I see them, and I certainly disagree with some of you on the facts as you see them. But that doesn't change the opportunity we have to have constructive dialogue. So let's just try to do that in this thing. Now, as Karen Reed's Lexus approached 34 Fairview Road, that's Brian Albert's home, it came from the north, heading southbound, by all accounts, by what I can see on the map anyway, and it pulled up to the curb in front of the house, near the flagpole. O'Keefe, I'm theorizing, based on all of the evidence, opened the passenger door and stepped out. Now keep in mind, the vehicle's facing south. To his right side was as he exited out, was the curb line. And he turned around to walk toward the driveway, which was back to the north, with his right side facing the SUV. He began walking, again, I believe, toward that driveway to the north. Reed pulled away, and that would have put O'Keefe somewhere near the back of the vehicle, which would have been, again, on his right side as it pulled away. Then, according to the statements, Reed initiates a three-point turn to head back north on Fairview Road. Now, in this video, I'm trying to kind of show in a very rough way that Reed's driving her SUV southbound, so she's approaching from the north, driving southbound to 34 Fairview. As she pulls to a stop, O'Keefe exits the vehicle eastward from the vehicle between the curb and the vehicle to go into the home. Reed then starts to pull away and initiates a three-point turn to head back to the north on Fairview Road. In doing so, the evidence is pointing that she reversed the vehicle at a high rate of speed, and that's likely where the injuries occurred. Now, the prosecution is opining that the SUV slammed into O'Keefe's right side. That makes sense if he's walking between the curb and the vehicle when he exited to the north to go in the driveway. The impact likely knocked him backwards, with his head smashing violently onto the icy pavement, or perhaps the undercarriage of the vehicle. But what we do know is this is supported by tail light evidence on the road and John's DNA on the vehicle. Now, Karen Reed's blood alcohol reading that morning, later in the morning, suggests that she may have been well over the legal limit when she dropped O'Keefe off. And there's evidence that she was drinking at the bar, as was he, before going to 34 Fairview. So unless she can somehow prove that she had a whole bunch of drinks after she found John O'Keefe, she's going to have a hard time explaining why her blood alcohol content was so darn high. But now we have the testimony of two medical examiners who looked at O'Keefe's body and his brain after his death. Their findings are crucial. So first I want to talk about Dr. Renee Stonebridge. She's a brain specialist who examined O'Keefe's brain after it had been removed and preserved. She found bleeding around several parts of the brain, including the front and both sides, but especially on the right side, she testified. These injuries were fresh, meaning they happened within minutes or hours of the time he died. And they were caused by something hitting his head hard, a blunt force of some kind. Not by disease, not by natural causes. It happened by trauma. Now, she said there were so many tiny bruises inside his brain that she didn't even bother counting them all. And I've talked about this before with child cases, but the brain actually shifts back and forth when there's a violent force against it. It's called a contre-coup effect. And that just creates these tearing of the brain as it rocks back and forth like shaking a bowl of Jell-O. Now, more frightening is that parts of his brain were also pushed downward into the area that controlled his breathing and his heart rate. I mean, that means that he was under serious pressure. The brain was seriously injured. These are the kind of things that don't just hurt. They can kill, as proven in this case. But here's the thing. All of that damage was on the right side of John's body. And that's important because if O'Keefe had been walking behind the SUV with his right side closest to the vehicle, and Reed did in fact back up suddenly and hit him, it would have squarely been on the right-hand side. And that impact could have knocked him down incredibly hard, could have caused his head to slam onto the icy pavement, or it could have caused him to go under the vehicle and have damage from there. But we also know that he hit the tail light because there's glass fragments. Whether you agree with that or not, there are broken glass fragments, not only from a drinking glass, but from the tail light on the back right side. That kind of fall, twisting, and spinning would explain everything that Dr. Stonebridge saw. But I don't want to discount those of you that believe O'Keefe was beaten up in the house. But I'm leaning on the science of location, something that I spent part of my career advocating for worldwide. I know mobile phone location technology, and I know how unreliable mobile location can be if there isn't a strong tower signal or Wi-Fi that's connected to the mobile device or Bluetooth low energy beacons triangulating the data, and of course, whether they're getting the actual location data from satellite triangulation. Now, some of you are totally convinced that John O'Keefe made it inside the house and was attacked there. Again, I don't believe that the mobile phone data supports this. And more importantly, there's no factual evidence to support the theory. There are theories, but there's no physical evidence to really support that. The medical examiners didn't find evidence to back it up either. The injuries appeared to be on the outside of his right arm, his head, and bruising on his side. But most of that bruising you can see in the imagery looks like it's lividity forming, and that's just the blood settling. But that's not what you see in a brawl, in my opinion. And remember, this guy was found outside in the snow. There were no drag marks. No trail, no blood to clean up, no signs that anyone moved him. Now, I get that many of you think that there's still a cover-up, and this is all part of a bigger conspiracy to frame Karen Reed for something that happened inside the house. That is one major cover-up in my opinion, though, and that would include everybody in the home, the first responders who came to the scene, and the medical staff at the hospital. Now, we may not like the crummy things that we're learning about some of the investigators. We might not even like the fact that there were pretty poor crime analysis and crime collection tactics used in this thing. It certainly had investigative problems. The moral character is something that was really troubling. But that doesn't mean that Karen Reed didn't drink too much and, in a stupor or a fit of anger, killed John O'Keefe. I mean, does it?
Our first look at police dash cam as the first officer arrives at a Canton home early that snowy morning.
When I arrived, I saw Miss Reed Looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face.
Officer Stephen Seraph says he saw a man face up in the snow, later identified as John O'Keefe. Karen Reed and 2 other women were huddled over him. Seconds later, dashcam video shows jurors a frantic Reed running back and forth in front of the police cruiser.
Miss Reed was visibly upset. She kept saying, this is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this. And she was very hysterical.
Seraph says O'Keefe had no pulse and was cold to the touch. But how he died differs greatly according to the prosecution and defense.
The relationship's up.
Prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe were having problems. WCVB animation shows how prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe arrived in her Lexus SUV at that house in Canton for an after-hours party, but then she left without him. The next morning, O'Keefe's body was found lying in a snowbank near a fire hydrant in the front corner of the yard. Prosecutors say as Reed drove away, she slammed her SUV into O'Keefe, going more than 24 miles an hour, leaving him for dead in a blizzard. Reed's defense insists O'Keefe went inside the house, where he was killed during a fight and a dog attack.
Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did.
Outside the courthouse, Reed's loyal supporters continue to defend her.
She did not kill John O'Keefe, and the evidence is going to show that she was framed.
Any one of us could be Karen Reed. It's that simple.
The case that has divided Canton, now about to play out in front of a national audience.
Now let's talk about the vehicle for a minute. Prosecutors say that Karen Reed's SUV backed up really fast. The car's taillight was broken. Pieces were found in the snow, on the ground. And we can complain that it was found later or at the time. It doesn't matter. Pieces of that glass were found there. But more importantly, pieces of John O'Keefe's DNA was found on a broken glass. And his hair was found on the bumper. That alone would be enough to raise some serious questions. But there's more here. Forensic testing also revealed the remnants of a cocktail spilled across the bumper, and bits of what looked like a drinking glass were embedded in the vehicle. Now, why does that matter? Because John O'Keefe was seen on surveillance footage leaving the bar that night with a drink in hand. The fact that the glass shattered on impact and the drink splashed across the bumper suggests that he was struck so suddenly that he never had time to even drop the glass. That moment, quick, violent, and disorienting, lines up with the trauma described by doctors. And that brings us to the second expert, Dr. Irene Scordabello. This medical examiner performed the full autopsy. Now, she also said that O'Keefe died from blunt force trauma and from hypothermia. She couldn't say for sure if it was an accident or a homicide. She couldn't say even if it was a beating. But one thing she made clear was this wasn't a natural death. It wasn't a stroke. It wasn't a heart attack. Something hit him hard. Now, could it be that he was beaten to death? I guess it's possible, but I don't think it's probable. Dr. Scordabello found 3-centimeter tears on the skin on the back of O'Keefe's head. Underneath that, cracked bones that spread outward. Now, this kind of injury takes serious force. She also found bleeding inside the brain. Again, signs of a powerful blow. John O'Keefe was apparently alive for a while after the injury, long enough for the brain to swell and for the cold to set in. Because yes, hypothermia helped kill this guy. His body temperature was just over 80 degrees at the hospital when they got him there. That's dangerously low. He wasn't dressed for winter weather, and he was drunk with a blood alcohol level of 0.21. That would have made him slower, more confused, and more vulnerable to the cold. Now, the doctor's findings matched Dr. Stonebridge's in another critical way. The injuries were mostly on his right side. The outside part of the arm, the part that everybody is saying was dog bites. The inside of the arm, we're not seeing pictures of. I hope we see more, but I don't see anything there that shows problems. These are the kind of injuries you get when one side of your body hits something hard or is drug underneath a car or some other thing. Now, if you're walking behind a car and it suddenly slams into you, these are the kind of spots that get hurt. But this is where the defense's dog theory, in my opinion, starts to fall apart. There was a large German Shepherd reportedly in the house that night, and some people believe that it might have attacked O'Keefe. I listened to a dog expert for the defense suggest that the wounds look like bite marks to him, but they sure don't to me. Now, we had 2 canines on my SWAT team, and I had been bit by them a number of times. The dogs, those that were young and in training, attach a little differently than the old solid dogs. But regardless, the defense has found experienced people who are willing to stake their credibility on the wounds as being delivered by a dog, even though there's 0 canine DNA on the wounds, on the arm of John O'Keefe, or on his clothing. Dr. Scortabello testified that she didn't find any injuries that looked like dog bites to her. Now, dog bites are usually with deeper punctures. They often form these half-moon patterns. Sometimes the skin is torn or ripped, and none of that was on John O'Keefe's body. So they've reverted to they were scratches. Well, again, there was no dog DNA found in his wounds, on his arms, or on his clothing. And to me, that's a big deal. If a dog had bitten him, I think it would almost certainly have left behind traces of DNA, saliva, something, and it didn't. Now, it's crucial to consider all the evidence in such cases, ensuring that conclusions are drawn from a holistic understanding of the facts. And this approach would honor the pursuit of truth and justice for everybody involved. So let me take a moment to really lay this out. The dog bite theory has been supported by a couple of professionals, including an emergency room doctor and a canine trainer, who both suggest that some of the wounds on John O'Keefe's body resemble those that would be caused by a dog. And it's important to acknowledge that these are credible individuals trying to explain a very complex and tragic situation. But when we step back and kind of look at this full picture, the totality of the forensic and medical evidence, some real inconsistencies start to surface that I just don't think we can ignore. First, let's talk about the injury pattern. O'Keefe's wounds were primarily on the right side of his body, the right arm and the right hand, and the back of his head. Now that's significant. If a dog had attacked him and latched onto his arm, wouldn't we expect to see injuries on the inside of the arm too, the other place? Wouldn't a person try to fight the dog off, pull the jaws apart, shield themselves? Yet there were no other injuries on the left arm or hand, which you'd expect to see if he'd been trying to defend himself. I mean, there were no torn fingernails, no scratches, no signs of struggle, no bite marks on the legs, nothing. No bite marks on the legs. I mean, wouldn't you be kicking and scratching and doing everything you could to get away from a dog attack? I know I sure would. And there are no other wounds to support it, only what people are trying to make out of these wounds on his arm, which I believe were from the undercarriage of the vehicle. But what do I know? Then there's the type of wounds that we're dealing with here. These weren't puncture wounds. They weren't tears like you'd see in a dog bite, in my opinion. Now, those experts disagree, but they were long, shallow scrapes. Linear kinds of abrasions and contusions. That's more in line with someone scraping against a hard surface like the pavement or a car bumper or the undercarriage of a car, not by being bitten. In fact, did you notice the one mark that most of them are running this way on the arm, and then one runs this way? A dog would have to have a massively deep mouth to be able to get to there, tear the skin this way, and not leave any other marks on the inside. I don't know. But here's where the biggest problem for the dog bite theory is, in my opinion, again, and that is there's no canine DNA found on John O'Keefe. None on his wounds, none on his skin, none on his clothing. A forensic scientist from UC Davis Veterinary Lab confirmed it. If a dog had latched onto him hard enough to leave these visible injuries, there would almost certainly be traces left behind. Saliva, DNA, fur, blood from a dog because they'll often bite their own mouth and have blood coming out from a fight like that. But there was nothing. Now look, it's okay for people to ask questions. That's how we get closer to the truth. And it's okay to consider different possibilities. But the evidence has to lead the way, not emotion leading the way, not speculation leading the way. The evidence has to lead the way. And I guarantee I'm going to get some mean notes from some of you who are saying that I'm not seeing the evidence the way you see the evidence. I'm trying to look at it in totality, even with the ugliness of a crummy investigation. Because when you put it all together, the direction of the injuries, their shape, their location, the total lack of canine DNA, the absence of any real defensive moves, the more logical, supported conclusion is this. John O'Keefe wasn't mauled by a dog. He was hit by a vehicle. Dr. Scordabello also pointed out something else. If John O'Keefe had been in a fight or moved after death, the snow should have shown it. Now, there were no drag marks, no disturbed snow. He collapsed where he was hit, and he stayed there. The cold crept in slowly, shutting his body down. Now, in the defense's defense, I guess we have to say that it continued to snow. So evidence like that could have been covered by fresh snow. But both doctors revealed the same basic conclusion. John O'Keefe suffered massive head trauma. Then he froze to death. Whether it was murder or a horrible accident, one thing is clear. The head injury happened first, and it was bad enough to kill the guy. So where does that leave us? Well, in my opinion, if you put this all together, the right side injuries, the vehicle data, the broken tail light, the DNA on the car, the hair on the bumper, the drink fragments, the pattern of wounds, and the lack of any dog DNA all points in the same direction. John O'Keefe was hit by Karen Reed's SUV. The car reversed fast and hard. The injuries match the forensic, scientific information that shows the vehicle's motion. The scene matches it. The science matches it. And perhaps the most haunting part, John O'Keefe didn't die right away. He laid there in the cold, alone, as his brain swelled and his body shut down. It wasn't from a dog. It wasn't from a bar fight. It was from an impact that came fast, hard, and without warning. The injuries match. The scene matches. The science matches. And that leads me to my final thought. This case has become more than evidence. It's become emotional, tribal, and that's when facts start getting blurry for some people. And I wonder if some folks are ignoring the forensic evidence because it doesn't match what they want to believe. Are they refusing to see it because it challenges their own personal narrative? In this case, the evidence doesn't just suggest a possibility. It draws a straight line from that SUV to John O'Keefe's injuries. And still, some people are squinting right past it. Yet, some of you may think I'm doing the same thing, and I appreciate that. And I hope, as you get ready to hammer me in your comments, that you just try to use a little patience. Maybe perhaps the patience I've tried to use. I hope that I'm erring on the side of common sense and science, and I'd encourage you to do the same. So that's it for today. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I suspect there'll be a few comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Don't be shy about jumping in the conversation that others are having either, but just try to be kind and constructive. And thanks for watching Profiling Evil. I appreciate your support. Be sure to follow along with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. That way you're going to get our updates, our insights, and behind-the-scenes content. And if you like audio podcasts, subscribe to Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And folks, if you're hungry for more crime, head over to profilingevil.com and check out all our content there. And while you're there, sign up for our digital newsletter, The Bolo. The only way you're going to get it is by signing up at profilingevil.com. And while you're on the website, if you love true crime books, check out Deceived. an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. It's about my investigation into and the ultimate takedown of America's most disturbing cults. Now, you might also like my book, She Knew No Fear, the story of the 1891 murder of my great-great-grandmother and how I solved that thing 130 years later. And stand by, because my new book's coming out in the next month or so. I hope you'll pick that one up too. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.